Welcome to the Redcaps Podcast, a podcast where we dip our caps into the blood of our listeners and we ramble on about old school games. In today's episode, I play you a interview I did with Eric, one half of the Mushmen, which are the creators of the Knock magazine, and we discuss Knock Issue 1 and the Kickstarter that's currently ongoing for Knock Issue 2. As you know, nobody can outrun a Redcap, so sit back, listen, and I hope you enjoy. I'm joined here by Eric Niewdan. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Very well, actually, for an English speaker. I've given up.
That's the Canadian side of me. Who is one half of the Merry Mushman creators and their amazing zine Knock. You may also know Eric as the creator of Mosquito Monsters, a wonderful game that blends both the black and white hack, both games that I own and love. So welcome, Eric, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You must be pretty excited. Under 4 minutes. Under 4 minutes and that Kickstarter was funded.
Yeah, and also we did that by mistake, so I was asleep by then. So it was a good start.
That's a good thing to wake up to. It looks
Absolutely.
like from the numbers I was looking at, you might hit like triple the funding that you got from issue 1 by the time this thing's all over.
Triple, I don't know, but double, I hope so. There's 6 days to go as we're recording this, so crossing fingers. Should happen.
Excellent. Yeah, and for as we discuss all this, folks, definitely in case I don't mention it, I'm sure I will a couple of times. Down in the description of the podcast, there will be links to this Kickstarter. Definitely go and check it out. But yeah, under 4 minutes, massive success thus far. Seems like it's only going to grow more, and the terminology for this zine, a bric-a-brac. I love that term. I had never heard it before. I saw this, but can you explain to those who may haven't looked at issue 1 what Knock is all about?
It's very simple, actually. Olivier Olivier is my partner in crime on this project. He came up with the idea of making a beautiful magazine, and there's a word in French that we use that doesn't exist as far as I know in English. It's revue, so it would be review basically. But it's those nice to look at magazines that have interesting content and that don't have any perishable stuff. So he wanted to do something like this. He wanted to do that big, thick brick of content for old school and adventure gaming enthusiasts, and also reuse those treasure troves of content that we've seen on blogs over the last 15 years and have a lot of the time forgotten about. So it's a lot of what we have in those magazines is these old articles by luminaries of the OSR and also by people you might not know, but repackaged, rewritten if needed, and illustrated, made nice looking, and something you can keep on your shelves for the rest of your gaming life, hopefully.
Yeah, I've described it when speaking with others as a tabletop book, a coffee table book that you would put out, and it's just a pleasure just to flip through looking at it. And then, like you said, the content is amazing. It's very rare that you find a book that is both beautiful to look at, but also incredibly useful from a content perspective. Oftentimes people will nail one of the two of those, but it's rare that they get both as well as you guys did.
Thank you.
And
yeah.
And of the design, the thing that stood out to me is how there isn't a square inch of at least Knock number 1 that is wasted, down to the point where you guys had a table on the spine of the book as well. Like every square inch of this book is covered in something. And I'm just amazed at how well it works. My son just giggled and sat there flipping through as soon as he saw the cover, and he was just like, "What kind of monster is that?" And just dove into the book. He actually went through it before I could when it first arrived here months ago.
That's great to hear. Well, how old is he?
He's just turned 6 actually, and he's enthralled with all my tabletop books. Anything that's got monsters in them, he has to go through and just indulge he'll try to. He's getting better at reading now, so he's able to start reading the names. But before, he was just like making up names, and he likens them to his Pokemon cards and makes up his own powers for different monsters. So it's great. I'll keep encouraging that imagination, and soon he'll be running games.
Yep, that's the prediction from me too. Issue 2 will be the same. Like it's become a game at this point. Every time we see a corner where we can add some stuff, we do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how issue number 2 comes out. You're saying that again, this is like a big collection of older blog articles, some of them that have been edited or rewritten. Was it difficult to get the authors on board, or were people, once you explained the concept, were people like really eager to get in on that?
Yeah, it hasn't been difficult at all. Like I think just one person told me that they weren't comfortable in publishing something that they published on their blog before. But everyone else was super happy to see their work recycled and given a new life and some kind of a permanent life, because you don't know how long those blogs are going to last. You never know with Google.
Yeah, I mean, how much material got lost when Google Plus went away?
No, don't tell me about that. I'm getting sad.
So when you went to go start selecting articles, was this something that you and Oliver you had your own collection of like, these are like the best things, and we go approach them, or did you kind of put out a call for it, or like how did the selection process go for you trying to find was there a theme, or was it stuff you guys already had set aside for?
So I'm afraid there's never been any method to our madness. There is a submission call since after we published number 1. So because I wanted to get some new stuff from people I didn't know, which worked quite well. Like I've received very interesting stuff from new people who, some of them don't even have an OSR blog. So that's going to be interesting to look at. But no, the idea was just, let's put these things that we like, and then, this reminds me of this thing, and wait, in my gaming notes from 3 years ago, I had a note of this magic system that I loved, and that didn't happen. That's something I want to do, but I haven't managed to find the gaming notes from that time. But yeah, it was just like going crazy and nerding around about the stuff that we loved, and make a list and then contact people, and then our list is still growing. We have so much stuff that we want to put in the next few issues. So yeah, it's just you guys putting stuff together, really.
Where did the name Merry Mushmen come from?
That came from Olivier. I am not sure how it came about that. He just decided he would call the imprint like this at the time, and I liked it, so there you are. But mushroom people, Mushmen, kind of
makes sense. This is your guys' first Kickstarter, issue number 1?
Yeah. I had never touched a Kickstarter from the publishing side. Neither had Olivier. He's been doing magazines for war games for a long time, for a few years already, but he was just pre-selling and not using crowdfunding. But yeah, it worked quite well. Like I was surprised and amazed at the audience we found from 1 to 2. It's just like there is very, very little marketing work involved on our part. It just happens.
Yeah, well, there's often the whole saying, if they build it, they'll come. But if you build it really well, I think, especially in smaller communities like the OSR community, the news of that just spreads and would bring a lot of folks in. Was there any big lessons that you learned from like Kickstarter number 1 to Kickstarter number 2? Like I noticed you guys, you didn't really have a ton of stretch goals on number 1 either, but I always think it's smart when I see a Kickstarter keeps their stretch goals very limited, keeps the original focus so that they don't have to worry about being able to fulfill all the extras. But were there any lessons learned, or was that a conscious decision as well to keep things really focused on just the zine?
Yeah, that was a decision. And there's one thing that we couldn't do is have too much material to put in an envelope, because we didn't want the shipping to explode. And that has been number one lesson from everyone who's made a Kickstarter in the last few years. That and also the fact that we've seen so many Kickstarters, like some of them we've subscribed to, struggle to deliver their stretch goals because they kept promising stuff that wasn't ready. So we just decided that everything had to be done, and we wouldn't make anything extra. It's much better on our end to just start working on the next issue and then have something that will be just as good or better 6 months later.
Right. No, it makes sense. I mean, it probably takes a lot of pressure off of you as well, as opposed to if you had promised, a stretch goal of, hey, here's a new adventure that will get written if we reach a stretch goal, and then you have to rush to complete that adventure or something along those lines. So that's why I think it's smart keeping it very focused, and it's obviously successful. Everybody's been very pleased, at least from issue number 1. How fast they got it, and the news spread well. So you guys are able to continue with that sort of a pattern. I think it'll only increase success over time.
Hopefully. Also, we're both freelancers, so our workload is kind of random, depending on. We can't really plan how much work we're gonna have to be doing at the same time as putting together a magazine and running a campaign. So there's no way we can promise too much. So it's just common sense at this stage.
Right. One of the extras that you guys are going to be doing with this one, though, is I believe I haven't looked at the Kickstarter page since it launched. Whenever I pledged, but you guys were planning on doing a reprint for anybody who didn't get a printing of issue number 1, correct?
Yes, and we caved after I don't know how many dozens of comments. We are going to have a reprint, a small reprint. I don't know exactly, probably 500 copies. Sorry. So that everyone who discovered us with issue number 2 could get number 1 in the Kickstarter.
And I highly recommend people get the physical book. I'm a big PDF fan. I have probably vast majority of my tabletop material is in PDF format, but the physical book of this one was really well done. I actually, when I got the PDF version of issue number 1, I read a couple of pages of it and went, okay, no, I have to set this down. I was going to wait till the physical one came. And then once it came and I could pry it from my son, then I sat down and finished reading the rest of it. But it is a fantastic physical item to have.
That's a great compliment to hear. You have to close the PDF and decide to wait. It's the first few pages. I was like, I could tell that just the art was going to be better in person. At least that's how I felt. It turned out to be right. I mean, it's glorious on the PDF screen as well, but there's something special about holding it in your hand. So, thank you.
Definitely recommend the physical book. What's your thought on, over the last few years, especially OSR zines just exploding? It seems like there's a zine out for everything now, and almost in the way that there was a blog for everything now. There's almost like everybody's putting out published zines on Kickstarter or through itch.io or what have you. And it's almost becoming a spot where instead of having a whole bunch of blog pages to follow, it's all these PDFs that are coming up. It's amazing how much content is coming out of the OSR space in such a very short time.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know what the causes are. Maybe it's because we don't have dear departed Google Plus to make sure we see everything that's happening. But I think ZineQuest, that Kickstarter campaign that they do every year, is probably also a big factor, because it's showed that a lot of people can do it, and then you can do it, and then you have an idea. You have 16 page of content. You can do it, and once you've done it once with that campaign, you can keep doing it and keep selling your ideas. And also, there's that sensual, tactile pleasure of playing with a little bit of paper instead of just reading a blog on your phone, you know?
Exactly. You've been a game designer, obviously, as I mentioned your game, and I'm assuming you've spent the better part of the last year just in depth with all these various articles trying to get the two books together. What has been your favorite house rule or tweak or gaming advice that you've come across or that you have yourself to give out?
And that's a hard one. There's plenty. Like I keep reading blogs and taking notes, but I'm not going to remember what I was reading the other day. But I was like, oh god, I need to run Old School Essentials with that rule. It's great, and it was your character, whatever their class, can use any weapons, but their hit die is the maximum damage that they can do.
I read that too. I don't remember where I saw it now, but I did read that same.
No, I'll have to look at my history to tell you. But it's what I do in Macchiato Monsters. Funnily enough, and it never occurred to me that I could have a wizard holding a 200 axe and doing D4 damage, and they'll look cool. They'll probably die, but it's much better than dying with a dagger in your hand.
For sure. I've been eagerly awaiting Gavin to put out his Carrion Crawler zine. I've got the inaugural issue from the Kickstarter off the advanced OSE. I'm waiting to see the next one because of the list of classes that they have. In the inaugural one, there is a mage class as a replacement for the magic user, and I'm just enthralled with that class. It may be my full-time replacement for the magic user, I think, long term, at least in campaigns where it's lower magic, just because it feels so much more correct to me than the original magic user. He's the mage is more like Gandalf than say Merlin, and it's a very neat class.
I've missed that issue, unless it's in my list of PDFs that I got with the Kickstarter, but I haven't read the class. Yeah,
it was one of the, I think everybody who kickstarted OSE Advanced got that issue. But yeah, definitely check that out. There's some other classes in there that, depending on your world or your setting, may or may not be all that appealing. But the mage, at least for me, was perfect, and I'm eager to see what else they come out with. Is OSE, like, which game do you play the most? Do you play your own game the most, or is it are you kind of mix and match between various OSR games?
So I have had a very strange lockdown pandemic year.
As we all have.
Yeah. In that I play and don't DM much, and I play a lot of 5th edition, which is not something I would have done normally. But I have friends. We started a huge West Marches style campaign. It's sprawling. Everyone was invited to DM. I can't get out because my characters have stuff to do, so I have to play 2 or 3 times a week. Poor me. But that also means I don't get to run my own games. And I was going to run OSC. I think it's probably next thing I'm going to run when I get a group, face-to-face group in the same room. But that said, I always have something in the oven or on the something that I'm making for myself, or because I think it could be a good game I could make and produce and publish in the end, which hasn't happened in years for some reason, but I keep making systems. So that's what my brain wants me to do. So that's what I run a lot of the time.
I honestly don't think I know a single DM that plays OSR games that hasn't, at least in some manner, attempted to make their own game. of just like, even if it's just house rules and they've modified an existing game to a point where it's no longer recognizable. Everybody has done that, I think. Very few, I think, have the skill set to actually publish something like you have. Mine ends up just being, Google Docs of house rules that somewhat resembles the system, but it's definitely a common thing. Everybody's brain's telling them to do that.
Yeah, I think it's also it's what the game wants you to do.
Exactly.
It's full of holes for good reason, and you have to fill them or not, or decide that you want more holes, and then you remove stuff that doesn't work, you change it, etc., etc.
Yeah, and or you do something like read Knock or a random blog, and you come across an idea that you had never heard of before, and you're like, how did I never hear of this before? That is brilliant. And it upends everything you had previously planned, and go from there. For me, one of the first things in recent years I can think of that did that was what's the name of the game? Sorry. Oh, Five Torches Deep. I had read Five Torches Deep, and its quantum slot-based inventory where you could have supply and just randomly pull in a item from a shop. So exchange this nebulous thing called supply, and suddenly it became 10 feet of rope. Was such a just light bulb moment for me in terms of how to continue handling long shopping issues in town. That it was pretty awesome.
It's a great rule set. Something I wanted to put on the table a long time ago already. Especially when you know people who are into 5e, you can tell them, it's the same game, just simpler and harder. And I'm sure it would work with those 5e types.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a game that I'm playing right now in 5e, and I'm as a player, not as a DM. I find I don't mind playing 5e as a player. It's not a game I want to run personally, but I don't mind playing it as a player. But I know there's like Hankrin Fernad has the 5e hardcore mode as well. There's a bunch of different rules that tweaks that you can do to 5e, because it's also very extendable and very easy to modify to bring it closer to an OSR feel if you choose to go that route.
Yeah, and the difficulty level isn't cranked too high either.
Yeah, exactly. For me, the amount of combinations for a character is part of the reason I find I don't enjoy playing 5e, or sorry, not playing, but running 5e, is that there's so many options to try to keep track of, and it starts to feel more like a superhero game, which again, as a player, isn't necessarily bad. It's just not something I would want to run as a DM, the superhero side of it.
Yeah, same. I think I'd rather play or DM or run a superhero game that's actually a superhero game than 5e that has there's just like too many moving parts and too much stuff to remember, which takes brain space for role playing your NPCs and making interesting stuff happen. You're just pushing numbers and looking at pushing miniatures or tokens on your screen and looking at numbers and rolling dice, and doesn't feel like it's a great experience as a DM, to me at least.
I agree. I found the times that I ran 5e that I would get so caught up in what is happening in that exact moment that I couldn't keep track of the greater world in my head. And I feel as the DM, even more so than NPCs, but the world as a whole is the character that I'm playing. And if I'm not able to focus on the world as a whole, if I'm so microed down to a tiny level, it starts to lose something for me. So that's why I prefer games like OSE or Black Hack or White Hack or Mosquito Monsters or things like that. A lot of the OSR games are all a little bit more comfortable, I guess, for me in that standpoint.
Yeah, too much prep time starting monsters and balancing encounters. I've DM'd quite a bit in the West Marches campaign I was talking to you about, but in the end I just gave up when the characters neared, I don't know, 10th or 11th level. I was just, guys, I've spent the whole weekend on this adventure. It took me 3 hours to about everything that could happen on my notebook, like I would do any other time with any other game, and then 15 hours doing balancing encounters and looking for maps and tokens and stuff like that. I can't do this anymore. Sorry.
So you're living in Ireland, I believe, right now, and obviously from the accent, you're French. Was D&D a big
Correct
thing?
on both counts.
Was D&D a big thing in France as you were growing up? Was the game different, or was it a different game altogether that had to be translated over? Or
so we had the red box. We had the Moldve basic set translated directly by TSR in 82, 83, I think. And that just popped up in hobby and toy shops. And that's how it started for me. I know students and people a bit older than I was had started playing AD&D with the English rules, the original rules. And that's how D&D started. But very, very soon we got translations of Call of Cthulhu, Stormbringer, I think was one of the first ones. I should remember the order of the games, but like between 82 and 1990, we had an explosion of games, and the French have always been quite competitive, and we like to do to show people that we can do better or differently, or the same but with more cheese. I don't know what it is, but we had a lot of and we still have a lot of games produced, published. Very few make it in English, and almost none of them has had any success. But I don't know, you might remember in Nomine, maybe, when it was...
I have one French OSR game. One moment. Just reaching over to my shelf here. Now, I may have gotten your last name well, but my actual French is pretty poor. Épris and Sorcerer, by Nicolas Dassault, yes. Épris and Sorcerer. That's the only French OSR I have. I have it in physical copy. A friend of mine recommended I get it. I only played it once. I have not looked back at this in years, but it's a nice game as well.
Yeah, Nicolas is one of the OSR pioneers in France. He was on the forums like 15 years ago. His handle was Snorri, like the Norse name.
Okay.
He's the guy who made Hunters of the Unknown. You know that micro game that sparked, that's the word I was looking for, a whole slew of reskins. There's like 50 or 60 versions to play Star Wars, to play anything you can think of.
Well, that's very cool. I find it very interesting when I speak with people from different parts of the world and find out what games they were playing. I was speaking with on a previous episode of the podcast. I was speaking with Nicholas from Paths Peculiar, his blog, and he was telling me about a game called. And again, this is going to be me butchering a pronunciation. It was Drakar Ange de Meur, I believe. It's a Swedish game, and it was completely separate from D&D. It ran more, I believe he said it was a D100 system. But it's interesting seeing how the same kernel then just blossomed into different streams of fantasy role-playing games in different parts of the world when they weren't serviced properly with native language versions. They created their own, and some of those became quite popular.
Yeah. I think every country, or at least every European country, has their favorite game that was played by almost everyone in the 80s. I think we were lucky enough to have D&D, but yeah, I've heard of that Swedish game. The Spaniards had something as well. They have that very famous game called Aquelarre. It's like a proper historical, yeah, that's the word. Sorry. Medieval game about sorcery and the Inquisition.
Oh, very neat. So let's bring us back towards Knock. You were saying you've got tons and tons of submissions in that you're trying to go through. So you've been between issue 1 and issue 2. You guys had about 6-7 months. Are you guys planning on this being like a regular bi-yearly thing, or will it accelerate to shorter intervals? Or
don't think we can physically accelerate, because we also have to make a living. Not that this is not making money. We're actually quite pleased at we're actually being decently paid for the amount of work we're doing, so that's great. But there's also other projects. So it's going to be one every 6 months, and to be honest, the second one came a bit faster than expected. It was a little bit more of a panic, maybe because the first one we had all the time we wanted, and when we decided on a date, we were pretty much ready. But that second one, there's been a lot of deadlines that have kind of ended at the same time with lockdown. So I'm actually at the moment finishing a few things that should have been finished in February. So it's been a bit of a mess, but hence the second time we launched by mistake, without doing any, without writing to the authors, telling them to get ready to do their bit promotion wise. What can I say? We're just two guys doing their thing.
No, it's maybe two guys, but it honestly it comes off very, very professionally done. Like is Oliver? I'm going to try to pronounce it like you do. I'm just going to goof it up. Is Oliver's primary job the layout? Is that his role between the two of you?
Yes, layout. He's doing art direction. Obviously, he's handling the whole printer side. All the books are delivered directly to his house, so he's probably doing 75% of the work. To be honest, I'm emailing people, asking for text, editing them, doing a first pass, and sending that to Olivier, and then he's doing most of the rest.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm not sure. I have not looked at his wargaming magazine. It's Battles, correct? Is that what his wargaming magazine's called?
That's it. Yeah.
If it's laid out anything like this, though, I'm not really a wargaming fan, but I would try to see if I can find a copy of that just to see how it looks. It's, I really like his work as far as the layout goes. But there will definitely be a number 3 and possibly a number 4.
Oh yeah, like we didn't expect as many backers for issue 1, and we were hoping that we would do at least as good with issue 2. But so, yeah, we're just flabbergasted, and we're just going to keep doing this until people tell us that they don't want any of them anymore.
Good stuff. That's what I like to hear. So for anybody who's listening, this Kickstarter has about 6 days left on it, maybe 5 days by the time you're hearing this. And so definitely head over to Kickstarter. There will be a link in the description of the episode. And I'm assuming, much like with issue number 1, there'll be at least a limited number of copies that'll be available for sale after the Kickstarter is over as well, for those who may not make it in time.
There should be.
Excellent. So yeah, this has been Eric. We're talking about Knock. Both issue 1 and issue 2 are fantastic. Issue 2 is up for Kickstarter. If you get in early, you might be able to get your name on one of those 500 or so issue number 1s that were reprinted. Highly recommend you do so. It is a fantastic zine, and like I said, the PDFs are great, but the physical copy is what you really want to get your hands on. Eric, thanks very much for talking to me about this. Is there anything else that you're working on, or that the Mushmen are working on, that people should be aware of? Any places they should go to find out more information about yourself or Knock or anything else?
The website for Knock is themerrymushmen.com. themerrymushmen.com. There isn't a lot at the moment, but if you want to order any of the issues, you can go there. Myself, you can find me on Twitter, would be the easiest way. My website has been down for several weeks, and I haven't found the time to solve the problem. So my Twitter is at @surcapitaine. So that would be captain spelled the French way, and SUR in front of that. And hopefully we plan to do a few things with the Merry Mushmen. We're probably going to have time to talk about this, about the few ideas we have once this campaign is finished. But yeah, you'll know. We'll make sure that everyone knows when we've decided what to do first.
Ooh, teasing. Do you want to drop what sort of things might the Mushmen do besides the Knock scene? A different book?
Books with stuff in them.
Ah, well, there you go. The big news drop right there, folks. More books,
yeah,
probably with illustrations and words. I mean, both.
Yes. I don't think either of us has told anyone. So you've heard, however vague, you've heard it first.
There you go. Well, thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate it. Thank you for the work, because, like I said, I've really enjoyed this. It's an amazing little zine. I learn little things from it every time I open it up, and I can't wait to get my hands on the second one. And I wish you guys all success with this one and the ones in the future. And
thanks for having me. Thanks for all the kind words.
Well, folks, that wraps up this episode of the Redcaps Podcast. I hope you enjoyed, learned something, and are eager to come back for more. Please subscribe in your podcasting app of choice, and if there's an option to leave a review, it would warm my cool little heart if you did. I'd love to hear from you, so if you head over to anchor.fm/theredcaps, you can leave me a voicemail, or you can say hi on Twitter or Facebook at theredcapsnet. We also have a Discord server, so if you'd like to get in some games or just have a chat, there'll be a link to that down in the description, the same as there will be a link to the Kickstarter. Please go check out the Kickstarter. It is a great zine. You'll love it. Remember, never let your cap dry out. Stay safe, have fun. We'll talk again soon.